Masechet Sukkah daf Lamed Bet. We're just at the bottom of Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. We're talking about the size and shape and disfigurements of a lulav. So Mishnah mentioned Niktam Rosha. If the top of the lulav is severed, what happens? It's no good. Amar Rav Huna lo shanu ela niktam. Aval nistak kasher. That's only if it's completely severed. The top of it is chopped off, then it's no good. But if the top is split, then it's okay. And we have a picture here. As a question, is it talking about the very top of it, or the top of the leaf, or the top of the spine? It seems here right now we're talking about the top of the spine, because we're going to talk about the top of the leaf a little bit later on. So it can be split, but it can't be cut off. All right, so that's what Rav Huna said. We're going to challenge him, however. Venistak kasher, is that true? If it's split, it's okay? The following Baraita is going to say the opposite. But the Baraita is long, is going to include a few more cases. Vatanya lulav kafuf, if a lulav is bent like this on top, this is a problem. This is actually somewhat of a common problem. You do find this kind of shape when you're shopping around for lulavim. So try to get one that's straight. Kavutz saduk akum domeh lemagal pasul. Kavutz means it has thorns on it, like in this picture, right? Here's a bunch of thorns. This be difficult to hold that, so that's no good. Saduk, this is our case, right? We said here before, if it's nistak, it's okay. That's what Rav Huna said. But this baraita sounds like no, saduk is no good. That's going to be our question. Then akum domeh lemagal pasul, if it's shaped like a sickle, so not just the very top, but the whole thing is crooked all the way. That's also a problem. We're going to look at all these cases inside. No good. Harut pasul. Harut means it becomes hard. When the lulavim that we use are unripe, we take them off. If you leave it on the tree for a while, the branches eventually will open up, and then the middle will get hard like a piece of wood, like a branch. So charut means if you leave it there for a while, maybe a couple of years, that is no good. You cannot use a lulav like that. Domeh lecharut kasher. However, if it's similar to it, it started becoming hard and dried out, but not quite yet, it's okay. Only if it completes the process. So that's all the baraita, and that's the question specifically on split in the mid, split on top. What's the law? Rav Huna said it's okay. This baraita says it's no good. Amara Papa de Avid kehemanak. The baraita that says it's no good is when it's split a lot, like a fork. Here's a picture of some Persian big forks. So if it's split all the way down the middle, like in this first picture here. Right? So it's a big split that's very noticeable, then it's no good. But if it's just a small cut, then that would be fine. All right, good. Now that we mentioned this baraita, we're going to analyze some of the cases in it. Akum domeh lemagal. It's curved like a sickle. Amar Rava lo maran ela lefanav aval acharav beriyate. Depends which way. We're assuming that when you have the lulav, the spine is facing you. The spine would be the smooth green part of it, not where all the leaves and the parts that are falling off. So lefanav, if it's curved forward away from the spine, that is no good. That's what the baraita is talking about. But if it's curved backwards towards you, towards the spine, then that's the normal way of growth. And that's totally fine. The other way, it might also grow like that, but it's an abnormal growth, so that's no good. Amar Rav Nachman listadin kelafanav dameh. Rav Nachman says if it curves to the side, we're talking about like a lot. A lot of times when you buy a lulav, people want to check if it's totally straight. So yeah, definitely the straighter the better. I mean, the tiny bit of a curve is okay, but if it's curved a lot, like a sickle, then it's no good. What about to the side? He says to the side is the same as forward and no good. So the only one that's good is if it's curved towards you. But another opinion says that says that curved to the side is similar to curved backwards towards you, and that's okay. So the sideways would therefore be fine. Halacha l'maaseh, we are mahmir on this. So best to get as straight as possible. Now, a lulav, literally with one leaf. What he means is that the leaves only grow on one side. like in this picture. That is no good. His language is interesting. He calls it a Baal Mum. It's a blemish. This is a type of language we know from animals. Right? An animal has some kind of blemish. It's called Baal Mum. So this language by itself is fascinating. Again, we're comparing a lulav to a korban. So add this to the list of places where there's Bet HaMikdash symbolism in the lulav and etrog and so on. And so therefore that is no good. Now, back to the Mishnah, nifresu alav, if the leaves totally came off. That means that you made it like a broom. Here's a picture of an ancient broom where you take some leaves and dry it out, and you would sever them completely and then tie them to a stick. Then you get a broom. So if you do that to your lulav, that is no good. However, if it's only spread out, then that's okay. It's still kasher. They're connected, but you harvested it while it was a little too late, and they already split out. So split off. That's all right. Tiyomet mahu. Tiyomet would be the top leaf. If you follow the spine all the way up, it ends up with one doubled leaf. It's usually closed. If that top is separated, what is the law? If it's completely cut off, it's no good. Could be one of two reasons. Either it's not beautiful anymore, or it's lacking. You don't have a full plant, and you need the whole thing. So my lav huadin nechleka. So would that be true if it was split? If it was just a cut in the middle, would it be the same? No, the different. It's being cut off is different because it's missing. So according to this, it seems the reason why cut off is bad is because it's missing. It's not a full plant. But not because it's not beautiful. But there's another version altogether of that. That if the top is split, is cut, it's the same as if it's totally severed, and they're both no good. So according to this, even though you're not missing any material, it's just not beautiful, and therefore this opinion is more machmir. Okay, back to the Mishnah. We mentioned the Biuda Omed. The Biuda says, if in fact it starts opening up, like in this picture, then you have to bind it. By the way, a follow-up from last time, someone asked about the binding, about eged. The Biuda's opinion is that you need an eged for all three species, right? All the branches. You have to put them together with mino, with the branch from the lulav. That is a minority opinion. Halacha l'maaseh, if you take all them separated, not bound, it's okay. You fulfill the mitzvah. So we do not follow halacha like Rabbi Yehuda. However, the widespread custom is to bind them together, and nevertheless, it is more beautiful. So, and also the widespread custom is to use a piece of lulav also. But technically, if you use a rubber band, it would not be pasul. It would still be okay because you don't need to have an eged. If you use a different type of element, it's still okay. All right, so that's binding the three together. Right now, actually, we're talking about binding the lulav itself if the leaves split off. Then Rabbi Yehuda says you have to put them back together and tie them. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda omer mishum Rabbi Tarfon kapot temarim kafut imaya parud yichpetenu. What's his source? Because they're called kapot temarim. Temarim is dates. Kapot literally means the branches or the leaves, but it can be read as kafut if you revocalize it. Kafut means tied, which means if Yehuda learns from here that it has to be call it palms together. Put your palms together. I'm going to call this class. It has to be closed up, and if it's separated, then you got to tie it to make sure it is in fact closed up. All right, that's the source. The Torah doesn't say that it's a lulav. It just calls it kapot temarim. How do you know that it means the lulav as we say? Ema haruta. Maybe it's the same lulav, but you wait till after it hardens into a branch and not when it's unripe like we use it. So how do you know? The answer is ba'ayna kafut beleka. We need it to be bound. We need the leaves to be together. And if you wait, then the leaves all spread out, and then that would not be called kapot temarim anymore. It's not called bound together. All right. Ve'ema ofata. Well, if you want something that's together, why not take the trunk of the tree? Right. That doesn't branch out. That's always nice and together, and everybody will hold a branch, a trunk of a palm tree. That would be interesting. So no, that's still no good. Kafut mikelala diika parud. V'hai kafut ve'omed le'olam. If you say it has to be tied up, it means it has to have the potential of being spread out. And the trunk, it never gets spread out. It doesn't have leaves on it that would spread out. So you need something that potentially could spread out, but make sure to use it when it's bound together. So the trunk is out. Ve'ema kufra. Wait a second. Maybe the kufra is when it starts to harden, like maybe after a year or so, but it's not totally hard. So it's spread out, but you could still somehow get it together if you really try. Amar Abaye, Teracheha darchei noam, v'chol netivoteha shalom ketiv. Pasuk in Mishleh says all the ways of the Torah are pleasant. The Torah would not ask you to do something unpleasant. And by the time it spreads out and gets hard, if you're going to try to put that back together, you're going to get all splinters. It's going to be very difficult to do. And the Torah wouldn't ask you to do something that's going to make you get wounded. So this is a beautiful principle that we apply when we say this in praise, where we sing it, but here it's being used to define the halacha. You want to know what the Torah says? Torah would never ask you to do something that is not pleasant. Okay, so that's a beautiful thing. I just checked. This principle comes up, it's going to come up again today, and about a handful of times throughout Shas in order to define what a halacha is supposed to be. Okay, Amal Raval Tosfa'a Rabina. This is not the normal, regular Rabbah who's fourth generation, because he's talking to Rabina, who is sixth generation. It's a different Rabbah who had the nickname Tosfa'a. Perhaps it means he was an expert in Tosefta. So here's what he said. Ve'ema tarte kape de tamre. Since the Torah says kapot temarim, kapot is plural. Maybe you have to take two lulavim, right? I mean, you have three myrtle branches. You have more than other things. So why not two of them? So he answered kapot kapat ketiv. It's written chased without a vav. And since you can read it as a singular, kapat temarim, we bring only one. All right, ve'ema hada. If so, maybe just bring one leaf, right? Just take one leaf off of it and bring one leaf. Why do you have to bring the whole branch? No, that who kaf kari le, right? That after all, we do still pronounce it kapot. In our pronunciation, it's a plural. And if it went really one leaf, then it would just be kaf. We'd have to read it as a singular also. So we have a kri uchtiv, and if it was kri and ketiv both as plural with a vav, then you'd bring a lot. If they were both singular, then you bring one leaf. But you have the kri is plural, the ketiv is singular, so therefore we bring one branch with many leaves on it. Excellent. Now the Mishnah goes on and says that Sineh har habarzel keshera. These palms from the Iron Mountain, different species of palms are good. You can use them. That this is referring. I think I lost that picture of it. Let me check. This is. We saw a picture on a previous stuff. It means that the leaves are short. So the bottom of one leaf has to reach the top of one leaf. Let's say there's a leaf. The top of one leaf has to reach the bottom of the next leaf, so that they overlap each other, and you shouldn't see the spine itself. So then it's okay. But if the leaves are so short that it ends before the next one begins, then that's no good. Abaye said that, and we have a braita to prove what Abaye's interpretation of the Mishnah is. Mishnah says all these har barzel are good, but he's saying not all of them, only if it's long enough. And the braita sure enough says sinar barzel pesula. So the palms from the iron branch are no good. That's the opposite of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said it's okay. So Abaye, we can use to answer that. The Mishnah, what said is okay, is talking about when they're a little bit longer and they reach, and the Baraita is talking about when they're shorter and they don't reach the next one. Shema mina. Okay, good. That what everything that we just said in those last two paragraphs, we can say another way. It's the same exact content, but instead of bring Abaye first, we're going to bring the contradiction first between the two Tanaitic sources. Tenan, Sinar Bazel Kasher, Vatanya, Pesula. Mishnah said that these Iron Mountain palms are good, but we have another Braita that says Pesula. You see here, because we're bringing it back to back, the Braita is just one word, but we have to imagine that the Braita, well, either was always recited together with the Mishnah, or the original Braita was longer, like it is here. Okay, anyway, you have the contradiction. What are we going to do? Amar Abaye la kashya, kan she'rosho shel ze magia lesadikaro shel ze, kan she'en rosho shel ze magia lesadikaro shel ze. So no problem. Here, when the Mishnah says it's permitted, that's when it's long enough that they overlap and the end of one reaches the beginning of the next, whereas the Braita that says it's no good is when it does not reach. Okay, it's two different versions of also Abaye's words. So he said it one way or another way, but it's the same meaning, but remembered in two different ways. Amar Rabbi Marion, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Amrila Taneh Rabba Bar Mari Mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay, we have two different attributions to the following statement. These two sages lived in very different times. Yoshua ben Levi was a very early Amora. Yochanan ben Zakkai is way before that. Okay, so but whoever, maybe they both said it. Shete temarot yesh bege ben hinnom. There are two palm trees in the valley of Ben Hinnom, and there was smoke coming out between them. And those palm trees, those are the Iron Mountain palm trees that we're talking about that are permitted. The smoke coming out of it, that's because that's the entrance to Gehinnom. Okay, so this is very interesting. The Valley of Hinnom is a place I've been there. I was on a tuyul there once. It's just south of the old city of Jerusalem. Happened to be when I went there on a tuyul, there were some Arab kids above, and they started throwing rocks at us. So it was really like Gehinnom for us. It was very dangerous. We had a sharpshooter there. He was all nervous. He took out his gun, and okay, we had to run to safety with our Shabbat shoes on, climbing up the mountain. But we made it okay. The reason why this place, which just happens to be called Ge Ben Hinnom, is associated with evil is because this is where that people used to offer their children to Molech and pass them through fire. So this was a place of Avodah Zarah, and therefore was associated with the punishment that comes along with that as well. And so that's how this place name became associated with the place of punishment. And so I didn't see the smoke coming out from there, but that's the tradition. Okay. Lulav sheyesh bo shelosha tefachim. The last part of the Mishnah said that a lulav has to be minimum 3 tefachim, about 9-10 inches. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, Shiur hadas v'araba shelosha ve'lulav arba. This is strange. Shemuel saying something different from the Mishnah, that the hadas and araba have to be 3, but the lulav has to be 4. Why? It should be a tefach longer than the hadas. So you have the hadasim, and then the lulav should stick out at least 1 tefach above that. Okay, that's Shemuel's opinion, the first generation Amorah in Bavel. In Eretz Israel, they said something different. Rabbi Parnach Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shidro shelulav tzarich sheyaseh min hadas tefach. Rabbi Yochanan says more, that the spine itself, besides the leaves, the spine has to be 1 tefach above the hadas, which means that you add but it has to be 4 just till the end of the spine, and then the leaves are going to be even more above that. So Rabbi Yochanan, as lulav is a lot longer than what Shemuel requires. So we're going to ask a question on both of them because they both contradict the Mishnah. Tenan lulav sheyesh bo shelosha tefachim kedei lena'anea bo kasher. The Mishnah said 3 tefachim, enough to shake it, right? You need something shakeable. So it has to be long enough that when you shake it, you have a little rattle. So that's 3 tefachim. So how come you said 4 or even more? We're adding a vav. It has to be 3 tefachim plus enough to rattle. You need some extra wiggle room on top that the top of it can shake when you shake it above the hadas. Mor kediit le, mor kediit le. And each one was deciding how much is that wiggle room that you would have a shake. So Shmuel said 1 tefach of leaves is enough. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, you need 1 tefach of spine plus the leaves in order to have that shakeability above the 3 tefachim. Okay, so those are their two opinions. Now, Tashema, we have a baraita that actually is the same exact words as Shemuel said. Shiur hadas varaba shelosha velulav arba'a. Right, that's exactly what Shemuel said. 3, and then the lulav is 4. So this is a challenge to the Rabbi Yochanan, because according to this, when it says lulav is 4, doesn't it mean to the top of the leaves is 4 and not to the top of the spine? We say no, lo levad me'alin. No, not necessarily. It just says lulav is 4. Doesn't say exactly what. So you can interpret this to be the top of the spine has to be 4. All right, good. So we resolved that challenge from the Braita. But now that you quoted the Braita, we're going to quote it in full. And we're going to find out that there's yet another opinion in the Tanaim. Kufa. Shi'ur hadas v'araba shelosha v'lulav arba. That's what we read already. Rabbi Tarfon omer be'ama bat hamisha tefachim. He says it. I don't know what it is referring to. Let's assume it's referring to the lulav. Has to be an amma that is 5 tefachim. Now we know there was 2 different kinds of amot in terms of the Bet HaMikdash. The standard amma is 6 tefachim, right? Amma just means from the elbow to the top. So standard is 6, but there was also amma of 5 tefachim, a shorter amma. Rabbi Tarfon says it sounds like the lulav, or maybe he means the hadas. Has to be, see, we had hadas here also. Maybe it means the hadas has to be an amma, not just 3 tefachim, a full amma. Okay, not a big amma, just a 5 tefach amma. Still, that's pretty long. So we're going to have to figure out, we're going to see 3 different interpretations of what Rabbi Tarfon meant. The first one rejects it. May God forgive Rabbi Tarfon for telling us this law. This is like a pretty extreme way of saying, right? This is a crazy law. It's impossible. If he's assuming he's talking about the hadas and that he needs a full amma for it, he says it's hard enough to find the hadasim that are 3 tefachim long. Because we're going to see today all the requirements of a hadas has to be the leaves, have to be cover the branch a certain way. It's hard enough to follow that. Now you're going to make us find 5 tefach long? It's impossible. So God forgive him for saying this law. There's no way that we can follow it. Okay, so to answer this problem, we have 2 opinions, 2 other interpretations. Ki atar Avdimi Amad. Avdimi was one of the Nechutae. He came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. So he brings this tradition and he explained it in a different way. He said, Amma bat shisha tefachim, aseh ota bat hamisha. Here's what you should do. It's not talking about, here's what we thought it was before. This is what the usual 6 tefachim to cut it in half. You know what you do? Take this same 6 tefachim, but that same amma, but instead of cutting it into 6 parts, cut it into 5 parts, which would mean that each part would be 1 1/5 tefachim. And you just take 3 of those. So the Rabbi Tarfon didn't mean that hadas has to be a full amma. He means it has to be 3 tefachim from a 5 tefach amma, which is equivalent to a 6 tefach amma. Okay, how are we supposed to know all that? I'm not sure, right? But that's the point. Where if you do the calculation, you end up with 3 3/5. So everyone else says 3. He said 3 3/5. Okay, so it's not so much bigger. Now it's more understandable. Semehen shelosha lahadas. 3 of those 5-part sections will be for the hadas. And lulav will be the rest of it. Either the rest of the other 2. Some say maybe 1 more tefach, according to Shemuel. Whatever. The lulav will be taller. All right. So this could make more sense. So how much will the hadas be? Telata utelata chumshe. 3 3/5 of the regular tefach. Okay. So now that's better than what we thought before. However, now we have a new question. Kashya de Shmuel ad Shmuel. Now we're going to have a contradiction of Shmuel with another thing that Shmuel said. We just quoted him saying that a hadas is 3 tefachim, and we understand that to mean 3 regular tefachim. But he also said halacha is like Rabbi Tarfon. And Rav Dimi, you just said that you interpreted Rabbi Tarfon to mean that it's 3 3/5. So which one is it? Does Shmuel require 3 for hadas or 3 3/5? So answer, Lodak, he wasn't being exacting. He was rounding off. So really, he thinks the halacha is 3 3/5. He just said 3. He rounded down. Is that okay to round down? I understand you want to round off and not be precise. You can do that and be more mahmir and say, oh, you need 4, but you can't tell me less because I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy the one that's 3, thinking it's okay. Shemuel's going to see it. Says, no, I meant 3 3/5. This is pasul. So you can't tell me. That's not a sufficient answer. So now we're going to have yet another answer. This is the last one. Ki ata Ravin amar. Ravin was another one of the nechuta'eh, and he gave this explanation. Amma bat chamisha tefachim aseh ota shisha. Actually, you take a shorter amma, the one that's usually 5 tefachim. So here, you take this one, the normal one, and take only 5. So take that size, but split the 5 tefach into 6 parts. Okay, and then you take 3 of those. So basically, it's half of a 5 tefach amma, which is 2.5 tefachim. So actually, the Rabbi Tarfon is more mekel. He requires a shorter one, only 2.5 instead of the normal 3. That's what he meant. Okay, and this will help us. So Amma b'chamisha tefachim aseh ota shisha semehen shelosha lahadas, 3 for hadas, hasha'ah lelulav, and the lulav has to be taller. Whatever, maybe he means the full amma for a lulav, or maybe he means one more like Shemuel, whatever he means. Kama haveh lehu tereh ufalgas. How much is the hadas? 2.5 hand breasts, so that's much better. Well, sof kasher d'Shmuel. Wait, you're not out of the woods yet. You still have a contradiction. Shemuel at first said 3 tefachim, and now he said halacha is like the Rabbi Tarfon. And you, Ravin, said that Rabbi Tarfon means 2.5. So which one is it, 3 or 2.5? Lodak, he wasn't precise. He was rounding off. And now, right, lodak. And this time it's lechumra, because really Shemuel means 2.5 is sufficient. He said 3. So you'll go and make sure to get a 3 one. You'll still be okay. So he's rounding up. That's lechumra, and then that's totally fine. All right. So that is the conclusion of the first Mishnah of the Perek. And then we go on to the second Mishnah. Hadas hagazul hayavesh pasul. Sounds familiar. We just said that about lulav. Everything that all applies to the hadas also. If you steal a hadas, you're going to have the same problem. If it's dried out, you're going to have the same problem. It's not going to be hadar. Shel ashera v'shel ilani dachat pasul. If it grew on a tree that was worshipped as Asherah, or it was condemned to be burned in a city that most of the people went and did Avodah Zarah, Parashat HaShavua coincidence, no good. Niktam rosho nifresu alav, o sheyu anavav rebot me'alav pasul. If the top of it was severed, or if the leaves came off, both of those are no good, same as lulav. Here's a new one. If its berries are more than the leaves. So a lulav doesn't have berries, but a myrtle tree does, and therefore you have to make sure that there are not so many berries. If you took the berries and removed them, that's okay. Here we have a picture of the berries. There you go. Right? So if you pluck them off, then it's permitted. But don't pluck off the berries on Yom Tov. That would not be permitted. It'll be like makebe patish metaken kli, taking something that was not usable for a mitzvah, and now you're making it usable. It might be bored also. You're taking off things that you don't want, maybe unless you eat them. Okay, that is the Mishnah. Gemara says, Tinur banan anaf ayis abot shanafi anafav chofin et aiso. The hadas doesn't say hadas in the Torah. It calls it anaf, a bow, etz of a tree, avot, av, dense, of a dense tree. So we need something that this leaves cover its wood. That's what it means to be dense. Ve'ezehu מיהו זה ואיזה הוא? Haman, no, not Haman. Have omer, ze hadas. Not Haman, hadas, right? Instead it's called hadasa. Okay, now, so what is it? What is a tree that is thick and its leaves cover? That's the myrtle tree. Hold on, we have some other options. An olive branch looks like this and also has nice long leaves that would cover the branch. No, ba'ayanan avot velekam. That's no good because we need dense that in that it's like a chain-like configuration. You see, these are all, I mean, even though it has a lot of leaves, they're not chain-like and they're not covering the entire thing. So it's no good. All right, the next option, dulba. Maybe you'll say it's an oriental plane tree. Here's a picture of it. This looks like common trees that we see, and these are very dense. So should be okay. They're kind of interlaced, the leaves. So would that be okay? No, I saw veleka. That's still no good because you need that the leaves obscure the tree totally, and it doesn't obscure the tree. They're not close enough. All right, hirduf, maybe an oleander tree. That's a picture here, right? The oleander tree. These look like they're kind of coming up and covering it. So would that be okay? No, this tree is number one. It has it's prickly, thorn-like, and it's also poisonous. So you can assume that the Torah is not going to make us use a tree that's poisonous. Someone might come and just touch it, take a bite out of it, and then this would not be good. And the Torah always has pleasant ways. So this is our second application of this principle. He quotes a similar pasuk that says you should love peace, truth and peace. So this would not be peaceful. Everybody would be all annoyed at having to hold on to this this prickly oleander. So therefore, that cannot be a good candidate. Out. Excellent. Tenor banan kalua kemin keli'a vedome leshalshelet zehu hadas. In order, if you want to know what hadas looks like, it's braided like a braid. In other words, that the leaves all follow one after each other, and it's a chain. So it has a nice pattern and follows one after the other. That is what hadas looks like, right? And you can see that what it looks like here. Okay, so now Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer Anaf Ais Abot Ais Shetam Esof Yoshave Have Ze Omer Ze Hadas. He has a slightly different interpretation. Why I say that Anaf and Ais, that the Ais, the wood part of it is the same taste as the fruit. I don't know. I never tasted a branch of a myrtle, but maybe like cinnamon, you can put it in your tea or something and taste it. And apparently, it tastes like the fruit, and that's another sign that it has to be the myrtle. Tana Eitz Avot Kasher Sheno Avot Pasul. Even if you get a myrtle, you have to make sure that the myrtle is dense. It has to have a lot of leaves, and if the leaves fell off, then it's no longer thick, and therefore it's no longer good. So hechidami avot, what does that mean? That's dense leaves. Amar Rav Yehuda, behu dekaimi telata tarpe bekina. That each base has 3 leaves coming out of it, right? That would be like a standard, like here, right? You see at here, there's 3 leaves coming out. Up here, 3. Here, another 3. So since there's 3, it covers it from all the sides, and that way it's very dense. That's one opinion. Now, even if you have 2 and then 1, 2 and then 1, right? Here's a normal looking one. If you had one of them a little bit lower and then the other 2, that would still be okay according to Rav Kahana. Rav Acha would specifically look for one that had 2 even and then 1 off. He preferred that one. You know why? Because Rav Kahana said that Tereh V'chad, and he loves Rav Kahana, so he specifically go and look for that one. Even though Rav Kahana would say, if you get all 3 even, that's even better. But he just wanted to do that because Rav Kahana said it, right? It's like some people that love Rabbi Abadi, they only eat fruity pebbles, right? Rabbi didn't say it's the only kosher thing. There's other things that are for sure kosher, but right, they specifically want to do what they heard their rabbi say. Amar le mor bar amemad le Rav Asher. Abba leahu hadas shote kari le. Mor, the son of Amemad, said to Rav Ashi, the name of his father, who was Amemad, he said that type where the leaves are off, there's two and then one, is called a wild myrtle branch. Nevertheless, it's permitted according to Rav Kana. Tenor Banan, nashru rov alav v'nishtayru bo mi'ut kasher. If most of the leaves fall off and only a few remain, minority remain, still okay. As long as it's still dense. Now, this is a self-contradictory. Hagufa kashya. At first you say most of the leaves fall off, it's still okay. That means 2 out of every 3 fell off, right? As long as it's still thick. Well, it's not going to be thick anymore if 2 out of the 3 fall off. Then you're going to have 1 little leaf on each row. So this doesn't make sense. Since 2 fell off, how can you still call it dense? Answer: Amar Abaye, mashkachat la be'asa misra'a tekaimei shib'a behad qina. Oh, it's talking about an Egyptian myrtle branch where at each point there are 7 leaves coming out. So even if the majority of them, that's 4 out of 7, fall off, you still have 3 left. So 3 left at every point. So that's just the same as a regular myrtle. So then it's still dense. So that's how it could be. All right, good. Amar Abaye, Shema Mina, Hai Asa Misra, Kasher Lehoshana. Abaye says, oh, I could learn a side point that I can use in the Egyptian myrtle. I never knew that. We thought maybe just a plain old myrtle. And so now we learn extra credit that an Egyptian myrtle is permitted. Pishita, of course, is permitted. Why would you think not? I might have thought, since it has a modifier word, the Torah just says hadas. I have to get a hadas. You call it Egyptian hadas, that's different from just a plain old hadas. So I might have thought it's no good. Kamash balan. And so now Abaye says, yes, it's still good. And now question, wait, maybe the question is better than the answer. The truth is, it's not just called a hadas, it's called a hadas hamitzri. So maybe it's a different species and it shouldn't be good. No, it's abot. Torah never said to bring a hadas. It calls it it's abot, a thick one. So therefore, and this is thick, so it doesn't have to be called hadas. It could be called hadas mitzvah. Anything in that fits all the descriptions that we said before, and even if it has a modifier in its name, that would not be a problem. Last line, Tenura Banan, Yaveshu Rov Alav, Vinisharu Bo Shelosha Bade Alin Lachin Kasher. This, we would just talk about a case where most of the leaves fall off. But if they stay on, but they dry out, this is a more common case. By the time of the last day of Sukkot, a lot of times the hadasim, they become dry. So if most of the leaves became dry, as long as there are 3 that are still moist and good, it's okay. Has to be at the top of each of the branches. So as long as you have 3 branches, at the top of each branch, there are 3 leaves each. All these things that we mentioned today, there's a lot of other interpretations, exactly where it's severed, exactly where it is, but right, at least just one interpretation here is that there will be 9 leaves altogether, 3 at the top of each branch. Even if the rest of it is dried out, it's still permitted to use. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, amen ve'amen. Thank you for joining.